There's something my stepchildren never understood about their father. He was a man who valued loyalty above bloodlines, respect above genetics. And on Christmas Eve, when they threw my belongings on the snow, saying, "This house belongs to his real family now," they were about to learn exactly who his real family was. My name is Patricia Williams, and I'm 59 years old. I've just buried my husband Robert after 6 years of marriage. His adult children have made it clear that I'm no longer welcome in what I considered my own home. But there's something they don't know about their father Robert's will. Something that will change everything they believe about family, love, and inheritance. 6 years ago, when I met Robert Thompson, he was a 58-year-old successful construction company owner, and I was a 53-year-old elementary school teacher about to retire. We both had children from previous marriages. I had lost my daughter Sarah to cancer 10 years earlier. Robert had 2 children from his first marriage, 31-year-old David and 28-year-old Amanda. When I first met Robert at a community center book club, I was immediately drawn to his gentle nature and thoughtful conversation. He wasn't flashy or boastful like some men his age. Instead, he listened carefully when others spoke and had a way of making everyone feel heard and valued. Our first conversation lasted 3 hours, covering everything from our favorite novels to our dreams for retirement. "I never expected to find someone like you at this stage of life," he told me after our third coffee date. "Most people my age seem to be either bitter about the past or desperately trying to recapture their youth. You're different, Patricia. You're at peace with who you are." That peace hadn't come easily. After losing Sarah, I'd spent years in grief counseling, learning to find meaning in life again. Teaching had helped. Being around children, helping them learn and grow, had slowly healed the broken pieces of my heart. When I met Robert, I was finally ready to love again, not as a replacement for what I'd lost, but as a new chapter in my story. Robert's relationship with his children was complicated and strained when we met. David worked as a software developer, but constantly struggled financially, despite earning a decent salary. He had expensive tastes, luxury cars, high-end gadgets, and a lifestyle that consistently exceeded his income. Amanda was a stay-at-home mother with 2 young children and a husband who worked irregularly. She constantly complained about needing a more luxurious lifestyle and seemed to view her father as a solution to all her financial problems. Both of them only called their father when they had financial needs. It was a pattern that had been established years before I came into the picture, but it became more obvious to me as an outsider looking in. "Patricia," Robert had said to me 6 months before we married, "my children don't love me. They love my money. You're different. You love me for who I am, not what I can provide." He was right. I truly loved Robert. His kind temperament, his patience, the respect he showed me, and the way he made me feel valued and cherished. Money had never been a topic of discussion between us. We both had modest retirement savings, and Robert's construction business provided a comfortable but not extravagant lifestyle. When we decided to marry, it was a simple decision based on love and companionship. We'd both been alone for years and had found in each other not just romantic love, but genuine friendship and partnership. The wedding planning revealed the first real glimpse of David and Amanda's true feelings. When Robert announced our engagement, their reactions were telling. "That's wonderful news, Dad," David had said with forced enthusiasm. "It's just, well, it seems pretty sudden. Are you sure you've thought this through completely?" Amanda was more direct. "Dad, don't you think you should wait a bit longer? Maybe get to know each other better? I mean, what do you really know about her background, her finances, her intentions?" The subtext was clear. They were worried about their inheritance. The fact that their father had found happiness again was secondary to their concern about how it might affect their financial future. When our wedding day arrived, David and Amanda attended, but their presence felt obligatory rather than celebratory. They smiled for photos and made appropriate small talk with guests, but I could see the tension in their expressions. During the reception, I overheard Amanda on the phone with someone saying, "Well, hopefully it won't last long. People their age, you never know." Both of them only called their father when they had financial needs. It was a pattern that had been established years before I came into the picture, but it became more obvious to me as an outsider looking in. Despite their coldness, Robert and I were genuinely happy. Our first 3 years together were peaceful and fulfilling. Robert was healthy, his business was thriving, and I had settled into a comfortable retirement. We traveled together, worked in our garden, and enjoyed the simple pleasures of companionship and shared life. David and Amanda visited infrequently, usually only when they needed financial help. The requests followed a predictable pattern. "Dad, my car broke down and I need $8,000 for repairs. The mechanic says it's not worth fixing, so I really need something reliable for work. Dad, we're behind on our mortgage payment. Could you lend us $5,000? We'll pay you back as soon as Amanda's husband finds steady work. Dad, the kids need new school clothes and supplies, and Amanda needs dental work. Could you help us out with about $3,000? Robert helped them every time, but he would complain to me afterward. "They only see me as an ATM, Patricia. Before I married you, I thought maybe they were just going through tough times. But now I realize they've always been like this. I just didn't want to see it." I tried to be understanding. "They're your children, Robert. Maybe they're just struggling to adjust to having a stepmother. Give them time." But deep down, I knew Robert was right. In 3 years of marriage, David and Amanda had never once asked their father's health, his happiness, or his day-to-day life. Their conversations always eventually turned to their financial needs and problems. The dynamic became even clearer during family gatherings. When we hosted them for holidays, they would spend most of their time discussing their financial struggles and future plans that inevitably required their father's financial support. They showed little interest in Robert's stories about his business, our travels, or our life together. Both of them only called their father when they had financial needs. It was a pattern that had been established years before I came into the picture, but it became more obvious to me as an outsider looking in.
"Dad, you're so lucky to be retired and not have to worry about money," Amanda would say. "Some of us aren't that fortunate. Some of us have real responsibilities and expenses." The implication that Robert's comfortable retirement was somehow unearned and that his current happiness was selfish in light of their struggles became a constant undercurrent in family interactions. In 2019, Robert was diagnosed with prostate cancer. The news came as a shock. He'd always been healthy and active. The treatment process was going to be long and difficult, involving surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation treatments. I immediately reorganized my retirement activities to focus on supporting Robert through his treatment. I drove him to every doctor's appointment, sat with him through chemotherapy sessions, researched dietary changes that might help, and held his hand through the long, painful nights when treatment side effects made sleep impossible. "I don't know how I would get through this without you," Robert told me one evening after a particularly difficult day of treatment. "You didn't sign up for this when you married me." "Yes, I did," I replied firmly. "I signed up for in sickness and in health. That wasn't just words to me, Robert. It was a promise." David and Amanda's response to their father's diagnosis were markedly different. They expressed concern during the initial phone calls when Robert broke the news, but their involvement in his care was minimal and sporadic. "We're so busy with work and the kids," David would say when Robert asked if he could visit, "but we know Patricia is taking good care of you. I wish I could help more, but with the children and everything on my plate, it's just impossible. You understand, don't you, Dad?" They visited perhaps once a month during the 18 months of Robert's treatment, usually staying for just an hour or two. Their visits felt dutiful rather than loving, and they often seemed uncomfortable with the reality of their father's illness. Meanwhile, I was learning to navigate the complex world of cancer treatment. I kept detailed notes about Robert's medications, side effects, and progress. I learned to prepare meals that would be gentle on his stomach during chemotherapy. I rearranged our bedroom to make it easier for him to rest comfortably. I became his advocate with doctors and nurses, ensuring he received the best possible care. The isolation was sometimes overwhelming. My friends tried to be supportive, but many of them were dealing with their own aging parents or health issues. Robert's friends from work were kind and concerned, but they had their own lives and responsibilities. Most days, it was just Robert and me facing the uncertainty and fear together. "Patricia," Robert said to me one evening in late 2020, as his treatment was nearing its end, "I need to tell you something important. I've changed my will." "Oh, Robert, I don't want to talk about such things. You're going to be fine." "No, you need to listen. David and Amanda have shown me who they really are these past 2 years. They love my money, not me. During the hardest period of my life, when I really needed my family, you were the only one who was truly there for me. You are my real family. They're your children, Robert. There's a blood bond between you." Blood bond doesn't equal loyalty, Patricia. Loyalty is a choice. And they didn't choose me. You did. Every day for the past 2 years, you chose to be here, to love me, to take care of me. That means everything. I knew he had made changes to his will, but I didn't know the specifics. He told me he had given a copy to his lawyer, James Morrison, and kept the original in our home safe. The details, he said, would be revealed when the time came. Robert's health improved significantly after completing his treatment in early 2021. The cancer was in remission, and for several months, our life returned to a new normal. We were more aware of how precious our time together was, and we made the most of every day. But David and Amanda's behavior didn't change. If anything, they seemed to assume that since the health crisis had passed, their father should return to being their financial safety net. The request for money resumed within weeks of Robert's clean bill of health. On December 15th, 2021, Robert died suddenly of a heart attack. It happened so quickly. He was decorating our Christmas tree when he suddenly grabbed his chest and collapsed. The paramedics worked on him for 45 minutes, but it was too late. I was holding his hand when he took his last breath in the hospital. David and Amanda were both out of town, David on a business trip and Amanda visiting her in-laws for an early Christmas celebration. They couldn't make it to the hospital in time. The funeral was small and quiet, as Robert would have wanted. His business associates, a few close friends, David, Amanda, and me. The children cried during the service, but their grief seemed performative to me. After all, in the past 3 years, they had barely made an effort to spend time with their father or show genuine interest in his life. David gave a eulogy that spoke about Robert's success as a businessman and his generosity as a father. Amanda added a few words about childhood memories and family traditions. Neither of them mentioned the past 3 years, Robert's illness, or his marriage to me. It was as if the most recent chapter of Robert's life, the chapter where I had been his primary companion and caregiver, didn't exist in their version of his story. After the funeral, as we returned to the house, David and Amanda asked to speak with me privately. "Patricia," David began, settling into Robert's favorite chair in the living room, "we know this is a difficult time for you two, but we need to discuss some practical matters." Amanda sat beside him, her expression serious and determined. "Yes, we understand you're grieving, but there are decisions that need to be made, and honestly, some things that need to be addressed sooner rather than later." I felt a cold dread settling in my stomach. "What kind of decisions?" "Well," David said, looking around the living room as if assessing its contents, "this house is quite large for one person, and now that you're fully retired, maintaining a property this size might be challenging both physically and financially." "I've been maintaining this house for 6 years," I replied calmly. "Yes, but Dad was here to help," Amanda interjected. "Now the situation is different. Besides, this house has deep family history for us. Dad lived here as a child when his parents owned it,
And David and I have so many memories here. It's really our family home, you know? Family home. The house where I had lived for 6 years, where Robert and I had created our life together, where I had nursed him through his illness, was suddenly not my home at all. I think we should wait to see what the will says, I said carefully. David and Amanda exchanged a look that I didn't like. Patricia, David said in a tone that was meant to sound reasonable, but came across as condescending. Let's be realistic here. You were married to Dad for only 6 years. We are his children, his legal heirs by blood. The law is pretty clear about inheritance rights. Besides, Dad wouldn't have wanted to leave you in a difficult financial position. I'm sure he made provisions for you. But the bulk of his estate, especially the house and the business, will naturally come to his children. That night, alone in the bedroom that I had shared with Robert, I couldn't sleep. I walked through the house, looking at the photos of our life together, our wedding picture, vacation photos, images of quiet moments of happiness. The house was filled with 6 years of shared memories, shared decisions, and shared love. David and Amanda's behavior didn't surprise me, but the speed and coldness of their approach did. Their father had been dead for less than 24 hours, and they were already making plans to reclaim what they saw as rightfully theirs.
The next day, David and Amanda returned to the house, and this time their approach was more aggressive and direct. "Patricia, we've been thinking overnight," Amanda announced as soon as I let them in. "We believe it would be best for everyone if you started making arrangements to relocate as soon as possible." "Excuse me?" "Look," David said, sitting forward with his hands clasped. "We understand this is your home too, in a sense, but let's face facts. This situation is uncomfortable for all of us. You living here while we're trying to settle Dad's affairs and figure out our own next steps, it's just not practical." "What do you mean by your next steps?" "Amanda's family is growing. They're expecting their 3rd child, and they really need more space. This house would be perfect for them. And I'm thinking of selling my condo and moving back here. It makes sense financially, and the kids would love having their grandfather's house as their family home." Selling? They wanted to either live in Robert's house themselves or sell it entirely. "We can't make any decisions until the will is read," I said firmly. "Whatever the will says," David replied with an edge in his voice, "this house represents our family history, our childhood, our connection to Dad. You've only been here 6 years, Patricia. We have a lifetime of memories here." "A lifetime of memories," Amanda repeated. "This house isn't just property to us, it's our heritage."
The way they spoke about Robert's house, Robert's belongings, and Robert's legacy made it clear that they viewed me as a temporary intruder who had overstayed her welcome. In their minds, their father's death meant my time in their family home was over. That evening, I called James Morrison, Robert's attorney. "Mrs. Thompson," he said warmly, "please accept my deepest condolences. Robert was a remarkable man." "Thank you, Mr. Morrison. I need to ask about the will reading. How soon can we schedule it?" "If it's urgent, we could do it as early as this weekend. Would Saturday morning work for you?" "Yes, please. The sooner the better." "I'll call David and Amanda to confirm. Is everything all right, Mrs. Thompson? You sound stressed." "It's been a difficult few days. I'll explain more when I see you." When I told David and Amanda that the will reading was scheduled for Saturday, their reactions were telling. Instead of solemnity or sadness, they both seemed excited and impatient. "Finally," Amanda said, "we can get everything sorted out and move forward." "It'll be good to have clarity. Then we can all plan accordingly." Their confidence was absolute. They had no doubt that the will would confirm their expectations and their sense of entitlement to their father's estate. The reading was scheduled for Saturday, but on Friday evening, Christmas Eve, Amanda made an unexpected and cruel move that revealed the full extent of their callousness. I had spent the day Christmas shopping, trying to find some normalcy in the midst of grief. When I returned home that evening, my key wouldn't work in the front door. Confused, I knocked. David opened the door, but instead of his usual fake politeness, his expression was cold and determined. "Patricia, come in. We've been waiting for you." When I stepped inside, I was shocked to see that all of my belongings had been packed into large suitcases and boxes in the living room. My clothes, personal items, photo albums, and mementos from my life with Robert. Everything had been systematically removed from our bedroom and bathroom and packed away. "What is going on here?" I demanded. Amanda emerged from the kitchen, her arms crossed and her expression hostile. "Patricia, sit down. We need to have a serious conversation. Why are my belongings packed?" "Because," David said bluntly, "it's no longer appropriate for you to be living here." "What do you mean?" Amanda stepped forward, her voice sharp and unforgiving. "Patricia, it's time you faced reality. Dad is dead. You are no longer part of this family. Whatever legal technicalities we need to work through, the fact remains that you are not Robert Thompson's daughter, and you never will be. I was married to him for 6 years." "6 years," David interrupted. "Just 6 years. We are his children for 30 years and counting. This house has been our family home since before you ever met our father." "We haven't read the will yet." "Whatever the will says," Amanda replied with cold certainty, "you are no longer welcome in this house. This home belongs to Dad's real family now." Real family. After 6 years of marriage, after being Robert's caregiver through cancer, after building a life together, I was not real family. "The locks have been changed," David announced, pulling out a set of new keys. "We've made a reservation for you at a motel nearby. Just temporary, of course." "A motel? On Christmas Eve?" "Just for a few days," Amanda said with false sweetness. "Tomorrow we'll read the will, everything will be clarified, and then we can make permanent arrangements. But you can't stay here tonight." I was forced to gather my belongings. They had packed my clothes haphazardly, mixing dirty and clean items together. My jewelry was thrown carelessly into a small box. Photo albums of my life with Robert were stacked carelessly with some pictures already bent and damaged. "This is incredibly cruel," I said as I loaded suitcases into my car. "It's not cruel, it's realistic. You were never the real owner of this house, Patricia. You never belonged here permanently." It was snowing heavily as I stood in the driveway, loading my life into my car on Christmas Eve. The neighbors were watching from their windows. People who had known me as Robert's wife for 6 years were witnessing my eviction from my own home. The most painful part was being forced to leave behind many of Robert's belongings that had sentimental value to me. His favorite coffee mug, the book he'd been reading, the small gifts we'd given each other over the years. "Those are family items," Jessica had said when I reached for Robert's reading glasses. "They belong to his children now." David handed me a piece of paper with the motel information. "Comfort Inn downtown. We've reserved 2 nights. We don't anticipate you'll need longer than that." As I drove away from the house in the snow, I realized that David and Amanda had planned this eviction carefully. They had spent the day changing locks, packing my belongings, and making arrangements to remove me from their father's house before the will was even read. Their confidence in the outcome was absolute. In the motel room that night, I cried tears of grief, anger, and humiliation. But as the night wore on, my tears turned to something else: determination. Robert had seen his children's true nature, and he had acted accordingly. Tomorrow, they would learn what their father really thought of their behavior. Saturday morning arrived gray and cold. I arrived at James Morrison's office to find David and Amanda already there, looking like they were attending a celebration rather than a legal proceeding. They were dressed nicely, chatting quietly with excitement, and barely acknowledged my arrival. "Mrs. Thompson," Mr. Morrison said warmly, "again, my condolences. Robert spoke of you often and always with tremendous love and respect." "Thank you, Mr. Morrison." "Shall we begin? I know this is difficult for everyone." David and Amanda leaned forward in their chairs, barely containing their eagerness. Mr. Morrison opened the official document and began reading the standard legal language that opens all wills. Then he reached the substantive provisions. "To my children, David Thompson and Amanda Thompson Miller, I make the following bequests."
Both David and Amanda held their breath. "To David Thompson, I leave my father's watch, which has been in our family for 3 generations, my collection of family photographs dating back to my childhood, and the sum of $15,000 in cash." David's face changed immediately. "Wait, what? Only $15,000? To Amanda Thompson Miller, I leave her grandmother's jewelry collection, the family china that belonged to my mother, and the sum of $15,000 in cash." Amanda shot to her feet. "This is ridiculous. Where's the rest? Where's the house? Where's the business?" Mr. Morrison continued reading, his voice steady and professional. "The remainder of my estate, including all real property, bank accounts, investment portfolios, insurance policies, business interests, and personal belongings not specifically mentioned above, I leave entirely to my beloved wife, Patricia Williams Thompson." The office fell into absolute silence. The only sound was the ticking of the wall clock and Amanda's sharp intake of breath. But Mr. Morrison wasn't finished. He continued reading. "I want to make clear that this decision has been made deliberately and after considerable thought. During the final 3 years of my life, as I battled cancer and faced my mortality, only one person stood by me with unwavering love and support. That person was my wife, Patricia." David started to interrupt, but Mr. Morrison held up his hand and continued. "Blood relation does not guarantee loyalty or love. True family consists of those who choose to stand by you in times of hardship, who love you for who you are rather than what you can provide, and who demonstrate through their actions that your well-being matters more than their own convenience." Amanda was now crying, but they were tears of rage rather than grief. "This isn't fair. We're his children, his flesh and blood." "My children, David and Amanda," Mr. Morrison continued reading from the will, "have shown me through their actions over many years that their primary interest in me was financial. During my illness, they visited infrequently and showed little genuine concern for my health or happiness. Their interactions with me were primarily focused on their own financial needs and problems." David was red-faced with anger. He can't do this to us. We're gonna contest this will." "You have every right to do so," Mr. Morrison replied calmly. "However, I should inform you that this will was prepared with great care. It was witnessed by 2 independent parties, notarized properly, and Robert was clearly of sound mind when he signed it. I have detailed notes of our conversations during the preparation of this document, and Robert was very specific about his reasons for these decisions." "There's more," Mr. Morrison said, returning to the document. "I hope that someday David and Amanda will understand that love and respect must be mutual to be meaningful. I have tried to provide them with guidance and support throughout their lives, but I cannot force them to value our relationship as more than a financial arrangement." Amanda was sobbing now. "Dad wouldn't do this to us. He loved us." "He did love you," Mr. Morrison said gently, "but love doesn't mean ignoring reality. Your father was very clear about his decision." "The $15,000 each?"
Mr. Morrison continued, is intended as a final gift and an opportunity for David and Amanda to begin building independent lives that don't rely on their father's continuing financial support.
David slammed his hand on the conference table. We're going to fight this. We're going to take this to court and prove that he was coerced or manipulated. That is your right, Mr. Morrison acknowledged. However, I feel obligated to tell you that such challenges are rarely successful, especially when the will is as clearly written and well documented as this one. Robert left very detailed notes about his decision-making process, and I have records of multiple conversations where he expressed his concerns about your relationships with him. What kind of concerns? Amanda demanded. Mr. Morrison consulted his notes. Robert felt that your interactions with him had become primarily transactional, that you contacted him mainly when you needed financial assistance, and that he showed little interest in his life, his health, or his happiness otherwise. During his cancer treatment, he was particularly hurt by your limited involvement in his care. We were busy, David protested. We had our own lives, our own responsibilities. Of course, Mr. Morrison replied, and Robert understood that. But Patricia also had her own life and responsibilities, and she chose to prioritize Robert's care and well-being. That choice meant everything to him.
That afternoon, I returned to the house, now legally and undisputedly my house, with Mr. Morrison and the proper legal documentation. The locks were still changed, but I now had the legal authority to reclaim my home. When I knocked on the door, David answered with his usual hostile expression. "What do you want?" he demanded. "I want to enter my house," I replied calmly. "This isn't your house."
Mr. Morrison stepped forward. "Mr. Thompson, Mrs. Patricia Thompson is now the legal owner of this property. I need you to surrender the keys immediately." "I'm not giving you any keys." "Then we'll need to call the police," Mr. Morrison said matter-of-factly. "Mrs. Thompson has every legal right to enter her property, and you are currently trespassing." Amanda appeared behind David, her eyes red and swollen from crying. "How is this fair?" she screamed. "You lived in this house for 6 years. We lived here for 30 years. Fairness was your father's decision to make. I'm simply honoring his wishes. You manipulated him. You poisoned his mind against us." "I didn't have to," I said quietly. "Your actions spoke for themselves." Mr. Morrison intervened again. "I'm going to need those keys now, or I'll have to call the authorities." With great reluctance and obvious fury, Amanda threw the keys at my feet. "Take your damn keys." When I entered the house, I found that my belongings were still packed in boxes and suitcases, exactly as they had left them the night before. David and Amanda hadn't been living in the house. They had simply been occupying it to keep me out. "Where are we supposed to go?" Amanda wailed. "That's not my concern," I replied. "Last night you told me that wasn't your concern when you threw me out in the snow on Christmas Eve." David made one more attempt at negotiation. "Patricia, let's be reasonable here. This house is huge. We could share it, work out some kind of arrangement." "No," I said firmly. "Yesterday, you made it clear that I was not real family and that I didn't belong here. Your father decided otherwise. His decision stands." "We're going to contest this will," Amanda threatened. "We're going to fight this in court." "That's your right," I acknowledged. "But while you're fighting it, I'll be living in my house, managing my inheritance, and getting on with my life." Over the next 2 days, David and Amanda returned to collect their belongings. The process was dramatic and bitter. Amanda cried constantly, making a show of packing childhood mementos and family photos. David moved through the house with barely contained rage, roughly shoving items into boxes and muttering complaints under his breath. "This isn't over," David told me as he carried out the last box. "We're going to prove that Dad wasn't in his right mind when he signed that will." "Good luck with that. But
I should mention that your father was mentally sharp right up until the day he died. In fact, his doctor has written documentation of his mental competency from just 2 months ago. Both David and Amanda paused at this information, clearly not knowing that such documentation existed. You'll be hearing from our lawyer, Amanda said as she walked out the door. True to their word, David and Amanda hired an attorney and filed a contest to Robert's will. Their lawyer, Michael Chen, was a competent estate attorney who took their case seriously but was realistic about their chances. 3 weeks after filing the contest, Mr. Chen called David and Amanda to his office for a frank discussion about their prospects. "I've reviewed all the documentation," Mr. Chen told them, "and I have to be honest with you. Your father's will is extremely well constructed legally. The witness statements are solid, the notarization is proper, and there's extensive documentation of his mental competency right up until his death." "But surely there's something we can do," David insisted. "This can't be legal." "It is legal," Mr. Chen replied. "Your father had every right to distribute his estate as he saw fit. The fact that you disagree with his decision doesn't make the will invalid." "What about undue influence?" Amanda asked. "She was taking care of him during his illness. She could have manipulated him." "That's a possibility we could explore," Mr. Chen acknowledged, "but it's a very difficult argument to make. First, we'd need to prove that Patricia exerted improper influence, but the evidence actually suggests the opposite, that your father's decision was based on his observation of the family dynamics over several years." Mr. Chen pulled out his file and showed them copies of Robert's notes and letters. "Your father left very detailed documentation of his thought process. He specifically mentions years of feeling that his children were primarily interested in his financial support rather than his well-being. He notes that during his illness, Patricia was his primary caregiver while you two visited infrequently." David shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "We were busy. We had our own lives."
"I understand that," Mr. Chen replied, "but your father interpreted that as a lack of genuine care and concern. And honestly, from a legal standpoint, his interpretation is supported by observable facts." "So what are our chances?" Amanda asked. "Realistically, less than 10%. And even if we were to win, the legal costs would likely exceed what you might gain. Your father left you each $15,000. A will contest of this complexity could easily cost $30,000 to $50,000 in legal fees." The harsh reality hit them both. Even if they won, they would lose money in the process. "Is there any other option?" David asked. "You could try to negotiate with Patricia directly," Mr. Chen suggested. "Perhaps she would be willing to give you something beyond what your father specified in the will." But both David and Amanda knew that bridge had been burned. Their treatment of me during Robert's final days and immediately after his death had eliminated any possibility of goodwill or negotiation. 2 months later, they dropped the legal challenge. Mr. Chen had been right. The will was ironclad, and their chances of success were virtually zero. 6 months after Robert's death, I received an unexpected phone call from David. "Patricia," he said, and I immediately noticed that the anger was gone from his voice. "Could we talk?" "Of course. I want to apologize for how we treated you after Dad died, for what we said, for everything." This was not what I had expected. "What's brought this on, David?" I've had time to think, to really think about Dad's life and about the choice he made. And I've realized something difficult. He was right about us. I waited for him to continue. "Amanda and I have been talking, really talking, for the first time in years. We looked back at our relationship with Dad, especially these past few years, and we had to face some uncomfortable truths, such as the fact that we really did only call him when we needed money. We really didn't spend much time with him just because we wanted to be with him. And during his illness," David's voice broke slightly, "during his illness, we left you to take care of him alone. You had your own lives, I said, though not unkindly. That's what we told ourselves. But you had your own life too, Patricia. You had your retirement, your friends, your plans, and you put all of that aside to take care of our father. We didn't. David. No, let me finish. We were selfish. We were thinking about our inheritance from the day you married Dad. We saw you as a threat to our financial future instead of seeing you as someone who made our father happy. The honesty in his voice was surprising and, despite everything, touching. I appreciate your apology, David.
There's more I need to say. Amanda and I both realized that Dad's decision wasn't about punishment. It was about recognition. He recognized who truly loved him, who truly cared for him, and who truly deserved to be called his family. A few days later, Amanda called as well. "Patricia, I owe you an enormous apology," she began. "What we did to you on Christmas Eve was unforgivable. Throwing you out of your own home while you were grieving, I'm ashamed of myself. Why are you calling now, Amanda? Because I've spent the last 6 months being angry and bitter, and it's been eating me alive. I kept thinking about how unfair everything was, how Dad had betrayed us. But last week, my youngest daughter asked me about Grandpa Robert." She paused, and I could hear her crying softly. "She asked me why we never visited him very much when he was sick. She said she remembered that you were always there when we did visit, taking care of him, making sure he was comfortable. She asked if we didn't love Grandpa as much as you did." Amanda. Out of the mouths of babes, right? My 8-year-old daughter saw something that I refused to see. You loved our father more than we did. Or at least you showed your love in ways that we never did. The conversation continued for nearly an hour. Amanda told me about her struggles in accepting responsibility for her part in the family dysfunction. She talked about how she had always seen her father primarily as a source of financial security, rather than as a person deserving of love and respect for his own sake. She realized something terrible, Patricia. I realized that if Dad had lived another 10 years, I probably would have continued treating him the same way. I would have continued seeing him as my personal bank account. I never would have learned to love him properly.
What made you see things differently now? Losing him, she said simply, and losing the money. When both were gone, I had to face the reality of what our relationship actually was. And it wasn't pretty. These conversations continued sporadically over the following months. Both David and Amanda seemed genuinely committed to understanding where they had gone wrong and to making better choices going forward. David told me that he had started therapy to work on his relationship with money and his sense of entitlement. I realized that I've been living my whole adult life expecting other people to solve my financial problems. First Dad, then I figured I'd inherit enough to set me up for life. I never really learned to be financially responsible. Amanda shared that she was working on her marriage and her relationship with her children. I don't want my kids to grow up thinking that family relationships are primarily about what you can get from other people. I want them to understand love and loyalty and genuine care. Both of them asked if there was any way to repair their relationship with me, not for financial gain, but because they had come to genuinely respect what I had meant to their father. "I'm not looking for forgiveness because I want something from you," David explained during one conversation. "I'm looking for forgiveness because I want to be a better person than I was." As I was going through Robert's personal belongings months after his death, I discovered a sealed envelope in his home office safe with my name written on it in his handwriting. Inside was a letter dated just 2 weeks before his death. "My dearest Patricia, if you are reading this letter, then I am gone, and my will has been read. I can only imagine David and Amanda's reaction to my decisions. I suspect they are angry, hurt, and probably convinced that you somehow manipulated me into changing my will. I want you to know the truth of my thoughts and feelings so that you never doubt the rightness of my choices.
When I married you 6 years ago, I thought I was simply finding companionship for my later years. I had no idea that I was about to discover what real love and partnership could be. You have shown me a depth of care, loyalty, and selfless love that I had never experienced before. This isn't meant as criticism of my late wife, Sarah's mother. Mary was a good woman, and we had a solid marriage that produced 2 children I loved dearly. But our relationship was very much of its time and place. Traditional, practical, focused on raising children and building a life together. We loved each other, but perhaps we never learned to truly know each other. With you, Patricia, I discovered something different. I discovered what it meant to be truly seen, truly known, and truly loved for exactly who I am. You loved me when I was healthy and successful, and you loved me even more when I was sick and vulnerable. You stayed by my side through the worst period of my life, and you never once made me feel like a burden. David and Amanda don't understand this kind of love because they have never given it or received it. Their relationships, including their relationship with me, have always been based on what each person could provide for the other. They loved me as their father, their provider, their safety net. But they never loved me as Robert, as a man with fears, hopes, dreams, and needs beyond his ability to solve their problems. I don't blame them entirely for this. Mary and I raised them during a time when families were more formal, more hierarchical. Perhaps we never taught them how to see their parents as complete human beings rather than just as sources of authority and support. But you, Patricia, came into my life when I was already fully formed as a person. You chose to love me for who I was, not for who you needed me to be. When I got sick, you didn't see me as a burden or an obligation. You saw me as your beloved husband who needed care, and you gave that care freely and lovingly. I want you to know that changing my will was not an act of anger or revenge against David and Amanda. It was an act of recognition and gratitude toward you. You earned my love, my trust, and my gratitude every single day we were together. You deserve to be rewarded for that love.
The money, the house, the possessions, these are symbols of something much more important. They represent my recognition that you are my true family, my chosen family, the person who showed me what unconditional love really means. I hope that someday David and Amanda will understand that love cannot be inherited like money or property. Love must be earned through actions, through choices, through the daily decision to put someone else's well-being ahead of your own convenience. You did that for me every day, Patricia. You earned my love, and now you have earned my estate as well. I also hope that my children will learn from this experience. Perhaps losing their expected inheritance will teach them to build relationships based on love rather than financial dependency. Perhaps they will learn to give love instead of always expecting to receive it. But whether they learn these lessons or not, I want you to know that you owe them nothing. You have already given them the greatest gift possible. You showed your father what real love looked like in his final years. If they are wise, they will someday thank you for that gift. Live well, my darling. Enjoy the security that this inheritance provides. But more importantly, remember always that you earned every bit of it through your love, your loyalty, and your selfless care. You are the best decision I ever made, and loving you was the greatest privilege of my life. Forever yours, Robert. P.S. In the small blue box in the bottom drawer of my desk, you'll find something I bought for you but never had the chance to give you. It's not valuable in monetary terms, but I hope it will remind you of how much you mean to me. I was crying by the time I finished reading Robert's letter. His words confirmed everything I had known about our relationship, but had sometimes doubted in the face of David and Amanda's accusations and anger. I found the small blue box he had mentioned. Inside was a simple silver locket with our wedding photo inside and an engraving that read, "To Patricia, my real family, my true love." Armed with Robert's letter and the clarity it provided, I began to rebuild my life with confidence and purpose. The inheritance included not just the house, but also Robert's business, his investment portfolio, and substantial life insurance policies. I was financially secure for the rest of my life. But more importantly, I was emotionally secure in the knowledge that Robert's decision had been made out of love and recognition, not out of anger or manipulation. I decided to keep Robert's construction business running, hiring a manager to handle the day-to-day operations while I maintained ownership. The business had been Robert's pride and joy, and I wanted to honor his legacy by keeping it successful and by maintaining the jobs of the employees who had worked for him for years. I also began volunteering with cancer support groups, using my experience as a caregiver to help other families navigate the challenges of serious illness. This work was deeply fulfilling and helped me process my own grief while making a positive difference in other people's lives. David and Amanda and I maintained a cordial but distant relationship. They had both taken their apologies seriously and were working to become better people. But the damage done during Robert's final days couldn't be completely undone. About a year after Robert's death, Amanda called with news. "Patricia, I wanted to let you know that we've had our third baby. We named him Robert after Dad." "That's wonderful, Amanda. I'm sure your father would be honored. Would you like to meet him sometime? I know things have been complicated between us, but he's Dad's grandson, and you were important to Dad." I was touched by the gesture. I would like that very much. When I met baby Robert a few weeks later, I was struck by how much he looked like his grandfather. Amanda seemed more mature, more thoughtful than she had been before. Motherhood and the lessons of the past year had changed her. "I want him to grow up understanding what real family means," she told me as I held the baby. "I want him to learn to show love through actions, not just words." David also seemed to be making genuine changes in his life. He had taken a new job with a lower salary but better work-life balance, and he was working to pay off his debts rather than relying on others to solve his financial problems. I realized that Dad was trying to teach us independence and responsibility our whole lives, he told me during one conversation. We just never wanted to learn those lessons. As the second anniversary of Robert's death approached, I found myself reflecting on the broader lessons of our experience. Robert's decision to leave his estate to me rather than his children had caused immediate pain and anger, but had also forced important changes and growth. David and Amanda had been forced to confront their own behavior and attitudes. Without the expectation of a large inheritance, they had begun building more authentic relationships and taking responsibility for their own lives. I had learned that love and loyalty are indeed choices that must be made every day. My choice to care for Robert through his illness hadn't been a sacrifice.
It had been an expression of love, but it had also been a choice, and Robert had recognized and valued that choice. The experience had also taught me about the difference between legal family and chosen family. David and Amanda were Robert's children by birth, but I had become his family by choice and action.
Robert's decision hadn't been about punishing his children or rewarding me. It had been about recognizing and honoring the kind of love and loyalty that is demonstrated through actions rather than assumed through blood relations. The story also highlighted the importance of communication in families. If David and Amanda had understood earlier how their behavior was affecting their father, they might have had the opportunity to change course. But family patterns, especially those involving money and expectations, can be very difficult to break.
The story of Robert's will and its aftermath became well known in our community, partly because David and Amanda had been vocal about their sense of injustice during the initial period after Robert's death. Reactions were mixed and often reflected people's own family experiences and values. Some community members felt that Robert had been too harsh on his children. Family is family, I heard one neighbor say. No matter what problems they had, they were still his flesh and blood. Others felt that Robert had made exactly the right decision. Actions speak louder than words, said Mrs. Henderson, an elderly woman who had watched our family dynamics for years. That woman took care of him like a devoted daughter would have. The actual children were nowhere to be found. The local pastor, Reverend Williams, asked if he could use our story, with names changed, as the basis for a sermon about the meaning of family and the importance of demonstrating love through actions. The Bible tells us that love is not just a feeling, but a choice we make every day, he said in his sermon. This family story reminds us that our true family consists of those who choose to love us consistently, not just those who share our genes. The story also sparked conversations in other families about inheritance and expectations and the relationships between parents and adult children. Several parents told me that Robert's decision had made them think more carefully about their own family dynamics and their children's motivations for maintaining relationships with them. It made me realize that I've been enabling my son's financial irresponsibility for years, one woman told me. I thought I was helping him, but I was actually preventing him from growing up. Others said that the story had motivated them to be more intentional about showing love and appreciation to their own elderly parents. I realized that I only call my mother when I need something, a middle-aged man admitted. Robert's story made me understand how that must feel from the parent's perspective. As time passed, the acute pain and anger surrounding Robert's death and the will reading began to fade, replaced by a more complex process of healing and growth for all of us involved. For me, the healing involved learning to live with the weight of Robert's trust and the responsibility of his legacy. The inheritance was not just money and property. It was a statement of love and faith that I felt obligated to honor. I established a small foundation in Robert's name that provided financial assistance to families dealing with cancer treatment costs. The foundation was funded by a portion of the inheritance and was managed with the help of James Morrison and other community leaders. Robert always believed in helping people who were trying to help themselves, I explained to the foundation's board. This seems like the best way to honor his memory and his values. I also made sure that the foundation occasionally provided assistance to David and Amanda's families when they faced genuine emergencies, though this was done anonymously and they never knew the source of the help.
For David, healing involved rebuilding his relationship with money and work. He had spent years living beyond his means and expecting others to bail him out when he got into trouble. Learning to live within his budget and to find satisfaction in earning his own way was a difficult but important process. "I'm actually happier now than I was before," he told me during one of our occasional conversations. "I was always stressed about money before, always worried about the next bill or the next expense. Now I live more simply, but I also sleep better at night."
David also began volunteering with a financial literacy program, teaching other young adults about budgeting and responsible money management. I figure if I can help other people avoid the mistakes I made, then maybe something good comes out of my stupidity, he said with a self-deprecating smile. For Amanda, healing involved learning to find identity and self-worth outside of her family's financial status and social position. She had always defined herself partly through her father's success and her expectation of inheritance. Learning to find value in her role as a mother and in her own accomplishments was challenging but rewarding. She returned to school to become a certified nursing assistant, inspired partly by watching how I had cared for her father. I want to do something meaningful with my life. I want my children to be proud of me for something other than how much money I have or what kind of house I live in. Amanda also became involved in a support group for caregivers, both giving and receiving help as she learned to care for her own aging in-laws. 2 years after Robert's death, an unexpected development brought our family story full circle in a way none of us could have anticipated. James Morrison called me one morning with surprising news.
Patricia, I've received a call from David and Amanda's attorney. They want to meet with you about a proposal. What kind of proposal? I think it would be better if they explained it themselves. Are you willing to meet with them? Curious and somewhat apprehensive, I agreed to the meeting. We met at James Morrison's office on a sunny Thursday afternoon in spring. David and Amanda both looked nervous but determined as we sat down around the conference table. Patricia, David began, we have something we want to propose, and we want you to know up front that we're not asking for anything for ourselves. I'm listening. Amanda leaned forward. We've been talking about Dad's legacy and about the kind of man he was. He was always generous, always willing to help people who were trying to help themselves. That's true. We know that you've established a foundation in his name. We think that's wonderful, and we want to contribute to it. I was surprised. Contribute how? We want to give back the $15,000 each that Dad left us. We want to donate it to the foundation.
I was speechless for a moment. Why would you do that? Because, David explained, we realized that we didn't earn that money. We didn't earn Dad's love or his generosity. You did. We want the money to go towards something he would have supported, managed by someone he truly trusted. There's more, Amanda added. We've also decided that we want to establish a small scholarship fund in Dad's name. David and I are both going to contribute $200 a month for the next 10 years to help young people who are trying to put themselves through trade school or community college. We're not rich, David said, but we can afford $200 a month each, and we think Dad would have loved the idea of helping young people learn practical skills and become self-sufficient. I was deeply moved by their proposal, both by their generosity and by their understanding of what would have mattered to Robert. I think your father would be incredibly proud of both of you, I said. And I meant it. The donation ceremony took place a month later. David and Amanda formally presented their contributions to the foundation, and we announced the new scholarship fund at a small community gathering. Robert Thompson believed that the best way to help people was to give them opportunities to help themselves, I said in my remarks at the ceremony. This scholarship fund embodies that philosophy, and I know Robert would be thrilled to see his children carrying forward his values. Both David and Amanda spoke at the ceremony as well, publicly acknowledging their father's wisdom and expressing their regret for not appreciating his lessons while he was alive. Our father tried to teach us about responsibility, generosity, and the true meaning of family. We were too stubborn and selfish to listen while he was alive, but Patricia showed us through her example what he was trying to teach us.
We can't change the past, Amanda added, but we can try to honor our father's memory by living according to the values he tried to instill in us. As I write this story, it has been 3 years since Robert's death. The acute grief has softened into a gentle sadness mixed with gratitude for the time we had together. The anger and bitterness that characterized the immediate aftermath of Robert's death have been replaced by understanding, growth, and even a form of reconciliation. Looking back on the experience, I've come to understand that Robert's will was not really about money or property at all. It was about recognition, validation, and the power of unconditional love. Robert wanted to ensure that I would be financially secure, but more importantly, he wanted to make a statement about what he valued most in life. He valued loyalty over blood relations, actions over words, and love that was demonstrated through sacrifice and commitment. His decision forced all of us to confront difficult truths about ourselves and our relationships. For David and Amanda, it meant facing the reality of how they had treated their father and what their behavior said about their character. For me, it meant accepting the responsibility of carrying forward Robert's legacy and values. The experience taught me that family is indeed a choice, but it's a choice that must be made repeatedly through our actions and decisions. Robert chose me as his family, and I chose him. David and Amanda eventually chose to be better people and better family members, even though it came too late to change their inheritance. I've also learned that forgiveness and reconciliation are possible, even after significant hurt and betrayal, but they require genuine acknowledgement of wrongdoing and commitment to change. David and Amanda's journey from entitled and angry beneficiaries to thoughtful and generous contributors to their father's legacy demonstrates that people can grow and change even in the face of significant consequences. The story has also reinforced my belief in the importance of honest communication in families. If Robert had been more direct with David and Amanda about how their behavior was affecting him, they might have had the opportunity to change course while he was still alive. Similarly, if David and Amanda had been more honest with themselves about their motivations for maintaining a relationship with their father, they might have recognized the need to change their behavior sooner. Today, 3 years after Robert's death, the foundation we established in his name has helped over 50 families cope with the financial burden of cancer treatment. The Scholarship Fund has provided assistance to 12 young people pursuing practical education and training. David has been promoted at his job and is now debt-free for the first time in his adult life. He's married to a wonderful woman who shares his newfound commitment to financial responsibility and community service. Amanda completed her nursing assistant training and now works part-time at the local hospital while raising her 3 children. She's become one of the most reliable volunteers in the caregiver support group and has helped dozens of families navigate the challenges of caring for sick loved ones. Baby Robert is now a toddler who bears a striking resemblance to his grandfather. Amanda brings him to visit me occasionally, and I enjoy telling him stories about the grandfather he'll never meet, but whose values I hope will influence his life. Most importantly, Robert's decision gave David and Amanda the opportunity to become better people. They lost their expected inheritance, but they gained something more valuable, the knowledge of how to love unconditionally and the satisfaction of living according to their father's values. As for me, I gained not just financial security, but the validation that the love I gave Robert was recognized, appreciated, and valued. I gained the responsibility of carrying forward his legacy and the privilege of ensuring that his values continue to make a positive difference in the world. Robert was right when he said that blood bond doesn't equal loyalty. True family consists of those who choose to stand by you in times of hardship, who love you for who you are rather than what you can provide, and who demonstrate through their actions that your well-being matters to them. I was Robert's chosen family, and he was mine. That choice, made daily through 6 years of marriage and particularly through the difficult years of his illness, created a bond stronger than blood and more enduring than money. The real inheritance Robert left me was not the house or the money, but the knowledge that I was truly loved and valued. And the real inheritance he left David and Amanda was the opportunity to learn what love really means and how to demonstrate it through their actions. In the end, that may be the most valuable legacy of all.